If you are even remotely interested in cars, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this sound. No, that wasn't the low brass section of your local high school marching band doing a drive-by. It was, of course, the distinctive sound of the Nissan VQ35 engine. The exhaust tone of the Nissan 350Z and Infiniti G35 has become quite the butt of the joke throughout the last few years when it comes to car exhaust. No longer is it the Honda Civic revving at 3 a.m. It's your high school neighborhood kid getting his automatic 350Z up to speed on the highway on-ramp. And yes, while the trombone and angry elephant jokes are usually up to par, it tends to beg the question, why exactly do these cars have such a distinctive tone to them, and is it possible to make them sound better? To get our answer to this question, we need to start at the source. When broken down, all we're really looking at here is frequency. When an object vibrates, it creates pressure waves, in this case, creating those pressure waves in the air. The amount of times those pressure waves are created is what we refer to as frequency. As you can imagine, different engines produce different frequencies, and in our case, the standard frequency of a V6 engine is derived to be right around 90 Hertz at 1800 RPM. The equation for that looks something like this. 1800 divided by 60 multiplied by 3. 1800 being the RPM, 60 being how many rotations per minute equal 1 revolution per second, or 1 Hertz, and multiplied by 3 since that's how many ignition events happen in a 4-stroke V6 crankshaft per revolution. Now that was a lot of numbers that I just threw at you. However, the main thing you need to know and take away here is that the variable in this equation, as you can imagine, is the amount of cylinders. So if we had, let's say, a 4-cylinder engine that gives us 2 ignition events per rotation of the crankshaft, using that same equation, we were looking at 60 Hertz at 1800 RPM, and for a V8, you'd multiply it by 4, and you get 120 Hertz. Now I know what you're thinking. If that's the case, why don't all engines sound the same if they have the same amount of cylinders? And I'm glad you asked. Creating the frequency or sound waves or bangs or whatever you want to call it is just the beginning. Once those frequencies are created, it all comes down to how they are collected or gathered and expelled out of the engine out to where it reaches our eardrum. These factors include, but are not limited to, the engine layout, the shape of the engine, the porting, the firing order, the exhaust manifolds, and of course, the exhaust itself. So now that we have all that information, let's take a look at the VQ35 itself and see what we have going on here. At its core, we have a 3.5 liter V6 engine. This engine features a cross-plane crankshaft and has a firing order of 246 on the driver's side bank and 135 on the passenger side bank. If we're looking at an earlier generation of the VQ35, the DE variant, you will find unequal length headers, meaning that they enter the rest of the exhaust at different times, taking our original frequency that we had and shaking it all up into a jumbled mess. Whereas the equal length headers that you can find from the factory in the HR variant of the VQ35, which came out in 2007, each cylinder's exhaust gases travel the same distance and come together all at once, giving a smoother tone to the engine. All of what I just mentioned you will find in every 350Z or G35, and is the basis of why these cars sound the way that they do. And love it or hate it, it's just the way that it is and what makes these cars unique. However, the second part of this conversation is how these cars sound once their exhausts are opened up with an aftermarket setup. With the formula of the VQ35 engine and all that it has going on, it's very easy for a modified exhaust on these cars to get loud, raspy, and of course, gives us that distinguishable trombone sound that we know. The good news is that there are ways to go about this and actually make these cars sound decent. If you have an early year 350Z with the stock unequal length headers or the DE engine, it's pretty common for a lot of owners to swap these out with an aftermarket set of equal length or long tube headers. It really does help smooth out the overall sound of these cars, and personally, I think it helps quite a bit. However, the most success that you are going to find with an aftermarket exhaust for these cars is finding one that is decently resonated and has a larger diameter exhaust pipe. If you're going the catless route, I cannot stress enough getting something like a high flow cat or an exhaust with a large resonator to help cut down the raspiness. And if you want a quick list of what I think are some of the best bolt-on exhaust systems for these cars, here you go. Number one being the Nvidia Gemini catback exhaust. This is a resonated catback system that has integrated X pipes and has 2 decently sized mufflers that give this car a really nice tone. This is arguably one of the most popular aftermarket exhaust systems for these cars and isn't insanely loud, and it makes a great choice for someone that's looking to daily drive their car. For right around $1,000, this is a fantastic option for these cars. course, you can't have a 350Z exhaust list without mentioning the Tomei Expreme exhaust. Now, this is a single exit exhaust, which is important to note. It's also titanium. This exhaust still has a resonator to help cut down the rasp, but overall it goes without saying that this exhaust is crazy loud. So if you want something that is going to get you the volume of a straight pipe, but not gonna sound like absolute garbage, the Tomei Expreme is for you. My third and final recommendation would be the Tanabe or Revel Medalion exhaust. This is the quietest exhaust on this list, which might not be for everyone. However, I think it sounds fantastic. And if you don't really want to worry about the cops bothering you too much, or your neighbors complaining about how loud your car is, or if you drive this car a lot on like road trips and don't want to worry about a drone, this is a great option. And not to mention, it's the most affordable one on the list. So even though the VQ35 has such a distinctive exhaust note, the truth is it really comes down to you watching this video, the owner of a 350Z or G35, to not mess it up with a goofy exhaust and keep feeding the stigma or stereotype that surrounds these cars, because it can be done right and they can sound good. So that being said, if you are currently looking for a new exhaust or other parts for your 350Z, G35, or whatever you might have, you can mod your car at Martini Works. We have access to a ton of brands, including the ones we just talked about, so you can go ahead and check out our website or shoot us a DM or email. We'd love to help you out. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.